Let's get insights, put things in perspective. Our next guest says there is consensus among Filipinos that the government must work with the U.S. amid tensions in the South China Sea. Joining us now is Victor Manhit, president of the Stratbase Institute, an advisory and research consultancy group. Victor, good to have you with us. So it is necessary for the U.S. to work with Manila. And of course, this week alone, in fact, just yesterday, we had Secretary of State Blinken in town to talk, presumably, about relations.
Yes, Haslinda, when you look at where we are, given a new government in 2022, there was this assertion by Filipinos that they would like our own president to assert our rights in terms of defending our territorial integrity. And it came with the idea that who should we work with? And we have been tracking this for 2 quarters since 2022 and even in 2023. We saw that there was this broad range of 70 to 80% of Filipinos trust the U.S., wants us to work with the U.S., not only in security matters, but even in ensuring strength in the economy for the Philippines, side by side with national security.
But what form exactly should that take? And I guess, to what level should the U.S. participate, especially in the South China Sea?
You need to see it from the broader policy of President Marcos Jr. He does not see it simply as choosing the U.S. over China, but our president has shown that he's willing to work with countries that share the values of a rules-based order, that share democratic values. And part of this is that not only the U.S., but other like-minded nations. That's why you have seen him engage with Australia, with Japan, with European nations. So we see this as a strategy of the president to broaden support. We have won from a legal point of view in terms of what is ours based on international law. But of course, to assert it, we might not have the capacity today. But if we can build collective deterrence among countries that believe on the importance of West Philippine Sea as a trade route, importance of West Philippine Sea and even eastern side, we call the Philippine Rise, taking off on data flows, that means submarine cables, would support that. We need that kind of support to work together, but not necessarily to help us intervene. It's about really deterrence to ensure peace and stability in the region.
I want to talk about that pivot to the U.S. for this Marcos administration, bearing in mind that coming into office, he promised to follow the foreign policy of the previous government,
yes,
Duterte, and that is to stay close to China. Yet, he's made that pivot. I mean, to your understanding, what prompted that move?
My initial understanding is based again on data that we have tracked in our institute. When you see numbers like 90% of Filipinos would like us to assert our rights, that means the president to assert his right. I think that was enough reason to pivot. But more than that is the engagement that he experienced from like-minded nations. When he asserted his rights, he saw the support that we have among these nations. And what we saw, parallel to this, is Chinese aggressiveness, coercion. So I think it placed the president on this position that who is the greatest threat to security in the Philippines? It's China. Considering that 6 years of Duterte administration, we did not benefit from it. What we provided, the Duterte administration, was simply appeasement. Some would even say, some critics would even say subservient, but that we will get no investments, a weaker defense posture. But now, we feel that we are in a better position, engagement not only in national security, but even providing economic security for the Philippine Republic.
How far do you think the president is willing to go? He says he does not want to poke the bear, so it is a cautious approach, but how far do you think he's willing to go?
I think as long as countries are willing to build maritime cooperation. We have seen discussions at the start, joint exercise, but this year we have seen joint patrols. I think this is enough to deter China. And also the government's policy to be transparent. That means we want to see the world. We want to show the world what is happening outside our seas, within our territory, based on international law. So that kind is, I believe, the direction of the president, but he will continue to build and build relationship, not only with the U.S. I don't think this government would like to be drawn into our U.S.-China strategic rivalry. It has nothing to do with that. It has something to do with protecting what is the Filipino people's territorial integrity and maritime rights based on an international rules-based order.
A lot has to do with the energy resources in the South China Sea. The Philippines has said that it wants to go ahead with exploration in the South China Sea. I'm just wondering, is it realistic to even think of doing that without perhaps instigating a confrontation with China?
That is, it's good to understand where it comes from. Areas which are now being contested by China were not contested by them until geological findings showed that there might be natural gas. So imagine how suddenly they encroach on Philippine territory that we call West Philippine Sea, because suddenly submarine, or maybe you'd say geological research team, found something. But the good thing also is that that's not the only place where we have those natural gases. But the best is for us to realize that our relationship with the U.S. should not be limited on military cooperation. Maybe we need them to explore with us, or not only the U.S., but even European oil and gas companies to explore with us to ensure that natural gas can be extracted, because we might be rich on it. And it's a transition fuel as we move toward greater renewable direction for the Philippines.
You talked about how the president made a pivot to the U.S. Because the people want him to. 90% of the people want him to. Will that translate to votes at the next election, you think?
There is that data also that shows that no national leader in the country can be elected if he appeases or subservient to China. That's why even the former president was playing with that name. We all know how he engaged with China, but there are some propaganda movements that positioned him as one standing up. That's why the last 6 months of President Duterte, he was defining the Duterte legacy as standing up. So you know how they're afraid of the Filipino people, in the sense that this is an emotional issue for the Filipino people. It cuts across geographic and demographic profiles of Filipino voters.